welcome to another Talking Sales episode. Today with me, I have a crazy interesting guest, Cece Lee, Chief Marketing Officer of Us, a seller and buyer enablement solution. Cece, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm really excited for our conversation.
Well, thank you for having me, Ada. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I think it's something as a marketer and product marketer, we always have with regards to collaborating with sales.
Yes, let's jump right into this topic, as you mentioned. Product management, product marketing are in the intersection of several different teams across companies. And what it means that a major part of their end success is basically being effective in collaboration. Mm-hmm. And, collaboration with sales is not always the most fluent one. So what are some symptoms that you observe across companies you work with that can entail that there is an issue with communication and that might be an area of improvement?
Yeah, no, I think it's really something that always comes up. And I think it's become sort of this stereotype of sales versus marketing that emanates in right. We always
a never-ending war, right?
which I think is incorrect. If we were to let's take a huge step back. It begins with the leadership and your corporate goals. In the end of the day, sales and marketing have the same objective. We are trying to drive interest with our buyers so that they enter the pipeline and eventually close deals. So it's all about revenue growth and pipeline development. And I think when we see these conflicts, for lack of words, arise is where I think we start off with good intentions. Hey, sales has to push this much in pipeline, marketing, you're responsible for this. So you start there. And what happens is then each org starts developing their OKRs, or their organization key results. And what happens is the results, or what you're striving toward, make sense within your function or your organization. But if the two leaders don't then sync up on those, that's where you have your first misalignment in terms of the goals. So for example, maybe sales is saying the way we're going to drive our goals is going after international markets. But what marketing is saying is, well, the best way to drive our revenue, we've shown, is through domestic markets. Instantly you have a misalignment right there. And when the leaders aren't checking in and saying, wait a second, we're doing international, you're doing domestic, where's the disconnect? That's where I think a lot of it begins. So the first thing is the leaders of the organizations have to be really good at collaboration and alignment. And then as you develop your OKRs, you have that collaboration. So I think that's where I've seen a lot of the potential disconnect in the organizations when it comes between sales and marketing. So that to me is the number one. The second part is assuming you're aligned, or regardless of what happens, you also have to have good communication within the next layer of leaders and working. And I think sometimes that also has an issue with, again, people are not talking to each other, they're talking through each other. And it's just making sure that you have those processes in place to connect on a regular basis, to align on how you're doing things. And I think through those two ways, we can solve probably 90% of the issues that do arise between marketing and sales today.
Yeah, so having a framework that would allow regular check-ins, because of course that is understandable that sales and marketing are the fast-paced teams, right? They're not waiting for something, they need to hit their quota. So probably the potential of misalignment is even more frequent in some teams that are moving ahead, along with the plan that is given, right?
Exactly. And I think I had one organization I belonged to, it was about a 2,000, 3,000 person company. And where the closest alignment, there's two areas of alignment between sales and marketing. One is when you're working at a top of funnel pipeline. So your SDRs or BDRs, whatever term is used, and marketing demand gen. You're both sort of going at it the same way, where you're trying to bring people into your pipeline. And it's making sure that You know what sales is doing and the messages they're putting out in the market. You know what marketing's doing on that week or in that month, and really aligning closely, because when we pass those inbound leads to the sales team, you have to know what's the ebook, what's the webinar, what was this thing that you were doing, but then also understanding what's working on outbound, because they're basically cold calling or cold emailing people. And maybe there's a message that really works well. You want to take that and bring that into marketing. So that's the first point, I believe, with collaboration. The second point comes in more of that product marketing with the sales, when you're talking middle funnel, bottom of funnel type of work. Product marketing brings a lot to that, because product marketers are supposed to know the competitive market, the positioning, launches. There's a lot of things you do that those type of middle funnel, bottom of funnel is very useful. And I think, again, we talk through it because product marketing is so focused, well, I have to deliver on this, and may forget or overlook talking to sales and think they know, hey, sales, through my research, you need to do X, Y, Z. But sales is like, that's great in theory, but let me give you how that works in the real world. And, you know, you're nodding your head. You've probably encountered this. We've all encountered it.
Yes, exactly. You know, especially that I know that there is a bias of an author, because I think that when a product marketer makes a pitch, makes a deck, makes an ebook, like, it's really human to assume that somebody reads it through and has the same level of knowledge. So there is this trap that we are falling into. We spend so much time researching a topic that now we think that everything is obvious to other people that needs to, you know, catch up with the topics that we've been researching as product marketers, right?
Well, and then the other thing is, we not only do we think our internal folks are going to know this, but then we think when it's given to the buyers, they're going to read it. And I think, I mean, that's a little bit about our company. Is one of the things that I learned before I joined Enablement. We had I think a 10-page case study.
Ooh,
so think
a
about
long
it.
one.
Yeah. And so it was a 10-page case study, and our salespeople were using it. And as we were looking at the data on our platform, we realized buyers only looked at the first 2 pages, maybe 3. So that type of feedback, I think, has been the difficulty between when marketing or product marketing creates a collateral, hands it off to sales, and then we don't know how is it being consumed on 2 sides. Are the sellers using it? Are they accessing it? And then if they are sharing it, what is the buyer doing with it? And I think that data layer in these conversations has been missing, and we're starting to see technology starting to bridge that gap. And so I think, you know, as we talked about, you have to have that regular check-in, that framework. You have to bring in sales when you're thinking about content and what is needed. And then that third part, you need to have the insights to then refine what you've created to help accelerate and make that process more seamless for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Do you have some good practices regarding how to actually boost this collaboration between marketing and sales, especially in a remote setup? Because, you know, it's easy to say, have a check-in when you're guys working from the same office, and there is this, you know, coffee machine knowledge flow that happens spontaneously. But then when you're working remotely or simply globally, there is another layer to sharing that information. What tips could you share with us on that kind of collaboration?
No, it's a very good point. When you go from in-person to even hybrid or 100% remote, we're a 100% remote company. And then when the pandemic hit, my in-person company went hybrid. And I think the first thing is the messaging technology helps bridge, you know, whether you use Slack or Teams or another one. I think that can help not bridge what people view as as you said, the water cooler conversations, but it allows me to go, instead of walking to a person's desk and tapping them on the shoulder, I can send a message on Slack and say, hey, are you free? Let's have a quick huddle and a conversation. So that's the first thing, is not being afraid to ping someone, because I think when it went to 100% virtual, people were like, oh, am I bugging them? And I think it's not about bugging. It's really about how you as an organization frame the context. And for us, it's about collaboration. I'm asking you a question. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I've set up regular check-ins on three levels. One is with our head of sales, meet with him weekly to review things. One is with the entire group, because there may be things that we all are talking about. And then three, I actually work with our individual reps or SDRs to have conversations, because an SDR is going to have different things than an AE is. So that's what we're doing. And then trying to make sure to bring in sales during the planning process. So for example, I scheduled a meeting with the AE. It's like, hey, I want to walk through what I'm looking at 2023 and some of the ideas I have for optimizing sales motions, things that we can do. Is I want to make sure I get her input. And I think the final thing that's unique for us, which is maybe considered untraditional, but I think this is where we're headed when it comes to sales and marketing. I don't view us as sales or marketing. I view us as go-to-market.
Yeah.
Yes, I view us as go-to-market. I happen to do things that quote unquote fit in a bucket of sales and quote unquote fit in a bucket of marketing. But in the end of the day, we are go-to-marketing. So when I'm looking at my goals for 2023, oh my Lord. My goals are not just quote unquote marketing. There are sales and how do I help support that? And then even on retention and customer growth. So when we think of it as go-to-marketing, I think we're going to start seeing this trend where that lines of sales and marketing start blurring. And you may end up having them report into, I know chief revenue officers have quote unquote mainly been on the sales side, but I think that we're going to start seeing chief revenue officers bringing in the marketing and sales together and further aligning the groups.
Yes, I completely agree. You know, the research shows that actually within the current buying process, only 5% of time is spent talking to a sales rep, and all the other times are like on talking to different competitors, researching online. So having like managing this revenue is actually managing what they know before they meet the sales rep, getting them to meet the sales rep, and then having the sales. So I believe that what you're saying is a really important trend that we'll be seeing more and more for 2023. As you know, the digital path becomes dominant in how people research and buy. And I don't think that we're going back on any of those changes.
No, definitely. And Gartner has really been talking about this digital transformation in sales, which I know obviously we're talking about sales, but underlying that is the marketing support and product marketing support for that, right? It's why we're thinking of seller enablement, but you also think of buyer enablement for that exact reason. If buyers are not engaging sales until nearly 2/3, if not toward the end of their process, then you have to optimize the other ways that they're going to learn about you. But I think it's exciting for sales because you become a consultant. And so again, now that knowledge that we talked about before, that product marketing is because they know it, you have to think through, like, how do I impart this on sales in a way that they can be intelligent and consultative to our prospects? And, that takes time. It's digesting it down to the sound bites, but also having that established training. I think for us in our stage of organization, that's also something I'm looking to implement in 2023 is how do I start imparting more knowledge and skill building throughout the year, not only with sales, but our entire organization too.
Yes, what you're saying, I believe, is crazy important because, before when you wanted to know about the product, you had to meet with a salesperson to get the information. Now information is available everywhere. So what is actually the value proposition of having a meeting with a salesman to understand the product? So what you mentioned, getting the knowledge from product across the whole organization is actually bringing the value into conversation and making that touch point very relevant in a sales journey, right?
No, definitely. And it's just like, when you look at buyer journeys, again, we can spout stats, right? Up to, I think it was 17 to 20 something different interactions, like going through. You have 6 to 10 buyers in the committee, even up to 20. So when you have these complex buying cycles, but let's think of what Amazon did. B2C, when you were buying products was just as complicated, but Amazon's made it simpler. And we do believe that the same can be done for B2B. We got to redefine this B2B buying experience. We have to make it easier for buyers, but we have to give the tools to the sellers to make it smooth as well. So I think it's very exciting. The pandemic only just exemplified the trend that was happening. It just made it happen overnight. It just accelerated this whole trend.
Yes, definitely, definitely. So CTC, from what you're saying, you have a very mature overlook at collaboration between product marketing and sales. What advice could you give to companies or specialists that do not have it developed in that way yet? What would be some good starting point to develop actually such a mature collaboration and framework for joint work on go-to marketing?
Wow, this could be another hour of a conversation, but let me start. I think there's a couple of things that a product marketing or marketing person can do, because when you're in a smaller organization, you're doing everything. But if you become like the first product marketer, as the organization grows, I think there's a couple of things that I would recommend. If you're the first product marketer in your organization, there are already a lot of preconceived notions of what your role is. And so I think the first thing is education. Educating what product marketing is, what the value prop is, and how you can work with the different organizations. This is probably one of the things you have to do. And then the second thing on that is, don't forget to check in and highlight how you've been moving those goals forward. I think that was one lesson I learned, many, many moons ago, is that you sometimes get so focused on what you're doing that you're not touting the work you're doing and how it's moving the needle. Because I think for us in product marketing, it's sometimes hard to tie, hey, this collateral piece I created, how did it influence the sales process or whatnot? Or I revised this deck and it's helping sales, but those numbers sometimes are a little bit elusive. So it's always just coming back and making sure you tie everything you're doing back to the larger goals of the company, how it's helping to drive the revenue, accelerating cycles, whatever. That's the first recommendation I would do. Second recommendation I would give is make sure to sync up with your key stakeholders and understand their goals. Because again, I think sometimes we get so focused on our goals, we forget to be empathetic about our colleagues and our peers and what they're trying to do. Talk to product management. What are they trying to do? Are they looking at adoption? Maybe that's what their goal is, and they're not looking at net new growth, depending on where you are. So those are different things you have to be aware of. And then also the sales, same thing. What are their challenges? Maybe they have a brand new spanking sales team and their goals, how do I get them to productivity as quickly as possible? They're not going to give a crap about a new white paper that you're producing. They're going to want a playbook. Can you help me with a sales motion and a playbook? So I think those are the two key things that you can do to start bridging or developing that collaborative spirit. And then as we talked about, then start having those regular check-ins, and then always just bringing it back to the humanistic side as well as the goals you have as an organization. I think those are probably my key learnings and tips that I would give to anyone who's starting in that role as the first product marketer, or you're just needing to bridge that collaboration between marketing and sales.
Thanks so much. I believe these are crazy important and are a great takeaway for our listeners that are looking to solve a problem or are starting just to build this mature way of collaboration with sales. Cici, if somebody is interested to know more about you or your company, where they can go to find you and learn more?
Well, definitely you can find me on LinkedIn and send me a connection. More than happy to connect that way. Our company is very easy. It's just enablement.com. You can find us there and really learn more of how we're helping to bridge seller and buyer enablement for that B2B buying experience we've been talking about. We also have Twitter, which is Enable Us Info. So there, and then I'm also on PMA, a Product Marketing Alliance Slack, Sales Enablement Collective Slack. So I'm out there. So you can find me on most of the Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as my company's channels.
Great, thank you. It was very much a pleasure to talk to you today. And thank you so much for taking some time of your crazy busy schedule.
Well, I appreciate it, Ada, and I hope that everyone has a great holidays and the New Year's.
Thanks so much.